Welcome to MK True Crime. I'm Ashley Merchant, your host today. I'm a criminal defense attorney out of Atlanta, Georgia. Here's what we have on today's docket. The Donna Adelson trial is fully underway. As of this taping, we've heard a lot from Wendy Adelson, estranged brother Robert Adelson, and more. We'll bring you the highlights. Rebecca and Jake Harrow, parents of missing baby Emmanuel Harrow, were just arrested for murder. Emmanuel remains missing. And new body cam footage from the Kohberger crime scene has been released and more. I'm joined by fellow MK True Crime contributors Arthur Aidala, New York City trial attorney, and Dave Ehrenberg, former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, and managing partner at Dave Ehrenberg Law. Good to see you both. Hello. We begin with Donna Adelson. The trial kicked off Friday with opening statements from the prosecution and defense teams. Just in case you missed it, here are some highlights to get you up to speed, and then we'll come back with more on the murder for hire mother-in-law trial. Watch and listen.
Tragically, on July 18th of 2014, Dan Markel was shot in the head in broad daylight, like something out of a horror movie. When he pulled into his driveway, the killers pulled in right behind him. The defendant acted in furtherance of this murder plot that went beyond just thinking about it or just talking about it. And these acts make her guilty as a principal to first-degree murder, just as if she was the one pulling the trigger in the garage herself.
You heard an awful lot about what other people did in this case, but not a single piece of evidence was discussed that shows that Donna Adelson planned this, hired anybody to do this, or intended that this happen. These kids are not deprived of their father. Their father was brutally taken from them. They lost the opportunity because someone took it from them. You've heard a lot about how she hated him. She said some ugly things during the divorce. Pretty foul things, actually. At the end of the case, because there's not going to be evidence that she did this, keep an open mind. Listen to all of it. We're going to ask you to find her not guilty of every single count.
Listen to this. Brick House Nutrition's Labor Day sale just went live. For a few days only, you can save 25% on everything with code LABORDAY25. Start fall off strong, reboot your health, and save big. And this massive sale includes their best-selling weight loss formula, Lean. Brick House Nutrition says doctor-formulated Lean helps turn excess fat into energy, reduces appetite, and curbs cravings. Lean could help you reach your weight loss goals without needles or prescriptions. Plus, you can also find Field of Greens there, a superfruit and veggie drink that promises your doctor will notice your improved health or they'll give you your money back. Plus, favorites like Radiance, their Super Collagen Booster, and even the new Brickhouse Whey Protein, it's all on sale, 25% off, but only for a few days. Kick off fall feeling stronger and more confident than ever. Head to brickhousenutrition.com. Use code LABORDAY25 for 25% off. brickhousenutrition.com, code LABORDAY25.
All right, so now we're going to dig into the Adelson trial. And just to sort of catch everyone up, this has been ongoing since last week. They picked a jury, and we heard opening statements on Friday. You just heard a little bit from those opening statements, first from the state and then from the defense. And we've been hearing back-to-back witnesses Monday and Tuesday. So I just want to catch everyone up just in case you haven't been following that. Donna Adelson is the mother. She's accused of orchestrating the murder of her son-in-law, FSU law professor Danny Markel in Tallahassee, Florida. And that trial that you just saw is in Tallahassee, Florida. Donna is mother to Wendy Adelson. She was the one that was married to Danny Markel. They were going through a bitter divorce, and Donna wanted the grandkids. She did not want to go to Tallahassee, where Markel lived. She wanted them down in South Florida. The state has already lined up a lot of convictions in this case against Donna's son, against Wendy's brother, the friend who connected them, the hitmen who are serving time in prison for actually committing this crime. And the list is long, but now they're coming after the mom, who apparently they think is the mastermind. I want to talk about these opening statements, what we thought about them. We heard first from the state's attorney, and then we heard from Donna Adelson's, one of her defense attorneys, former Judge Jackie Fullard. She revealed, in my opinion, very little about the defense's theory other than the state can't prove this in her mind. What do you all think? Dave, let's start with you. You're from Florida. What do you think about this as a opening for the defense?
Well, it's good to be with you, Ashley. This is
Good to
the
be
A
with you.
team. You've got Ashley, Arthur, Aidala, and Ehrenberg. So we are the A team.
Triple
And this
A.
quadruple A, because
Quadruple
Arthur
A.
is times two. This case is personal for me because I knew the victim, Danny Markel. He was a great guy. He was a brilliant law professor, a Harvard Law graduate, someone who could have made a lot of money in the private sector, but wanted to teach. And he loved being in Tallahassee, and he loved his two sons. And it was that love for his sons that led to his demise because his in-laws concocted a plot to kill him. And it's proven because the son, Charlie, has been found guilty already. Now it's Donna's day of reckoning. And as far as the opening arguments, I thought that the prosecution set out their case. And yes, it was very thick on motive and thin on evidence, but that evidence is to come. And Jackie Fulford, the defense lawyer, didn't really have a theory of the case other than the prosecution has to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, and there's not enough evidence to do so. I suspect that Georgia Kappelman will make the defense lawyer eat her words because there is evidence. Yes, it's circumstantial, but as you and Arthur know, circumstantial evidence can be just as powerful as direct evidence, and there's plenty of it. So yes, I think it's going well for the prosecution. I'm looking forward to justice for Dan.
You know, it's crazy that you say that because I literally wrote down my notes that they didn't have a theory of defense and all they said really was no evidence. So great minds think alike. What about you, Arthur? What did you think about the defense opening, for example?
Well, first, I want to express my condolences to Dave. I mean, I didn't realize it was that personal. I just thought maybe you had something to do with the case. And obviously, this is a tragedy any way you look at it. So I'm sorry for your loss. It's horrible under any view of the evidence. So I just tried a pretty heavy case. And years ago, when I was in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office, I believe it was the New York Times that came out with a study that said 80% of jurors, 80% of jurors polled after a verdict said that after the opening statements, the verdict that they had in their mind, even though they're keeping an open mind, the verdict they had in their mind after the opening statements turned out to be the verdict that they rendered at the end of the case. So I was taught back in the day, in the crime-ridden days of Brooklyn, New York, it's a lot better now, to be as passionate and as forceful in your opening statement as you are in any other part of the trial. You know, many people talk about, the summation. Summation is more or less, in my opinion, like a show. And there are certain cases where it connects the dots, but a lot of times it's a ego-filling event. The opening statement is where you set the stage. And the case I just tried, after the verdict, I had the opportunity to speak with the jurors in a very calm setting, even days after the verdict. And I was pleasantly surprised that the theory I've been functioning under for all these years is accurate. They were talking about things I said in my opening statement almost 2 months later in the jury deliberation. So I think the defense here lost a tremendous opportunity to really attack in their opening statement and plant seeds in the jurors' heads about what the reasonable doubt is going to be. You also have to have that passion that you believe what you're saying and you believe in the innocence or the lack of evidence. And, we saw a little bit of that. The prosecutor typically gives a little bit more of a dry presentation because they usually have the facts on their side. So they don't have to be as reeling them in with their performance because they usually have pretty salacious facts. Whereas the defense attorney has to make those jurors believe that they believe, and that should be true, in their defense. And then you have to articulate to those reasonable people using their common sense why the government is going to fail to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And I don't think that happened here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've read those studies as well. I think you lose the jury quickly after opening statements and they've made up their mind. It's crazy. A lot of studies say they've made up their mind after voir dire, which is difficult the more we're limited in what we can talk about with jury selection. But, definitely think with voir dire. So
actually, real quick, old school guys, like I'm talking about in like the 60s and 70s, a lot of defense attorneys would waive their opening statement. You don't have to give an opening statement. And they would stand up and their whole shtick would be, Well, Your Honor, since I don't have anything to prove and I'm not obligated to prove anything or give an opening statement, we're waiving our opening statement and let's see what the evidence presents. And then they sit back down.
I've seen a lot of lawyers here in Georgia who waive it until the defense gets to go. And I'm not a fan of that. I think that we need to speak as early and as often as we can, but a lot of folks will wait until after the state has presented their case and then present it. So there's a lot of different options. I wanted to talk a little bit about the different players in this case, because, I always like to kind of set the stage and see who's involved in the case. The prosecution, Georgia Kappelman everyone's a big fan. Dave probably has some information about her, but she went to FSU Law School, which is where Danny Markell was a teacher. But I think it's interesting that the defense attorney, Josh Woodman, also went to FSU. So you've got two FSU grads, and then the other two lawyers, they went to other schools in Florida. I'm a Florida grad, so I think that that's the only school in Florida. But I thought it was interesting that Danny Markell was beloved at Florida State, and you've got a prosecution and a defense lawyer from FSU. So, I did want to ask you, Dave, though, Jackie Fulford, the one who did the opening statement for the defense. So she's a former judge. She was removed from office. What happened there?
Well, there was a controversy and she resigned from office, and she is now the lawyer here. She wasn't the first choice for Donna Adelson. That was Dan Rashbaum, who was Charlie's lawyer. You can just see the conflict, especially because Donna's defense now is pointing the finger at Charlie and Wendy, everyone in the family but her and her husband, I guess.
Yeah.
So the judge at the last minute, the 11th hour, noted that Charlie had not waived the conflict, and so forced Donna to get rid of Rashbaum and to find her own new lawyer, and Jackie Fulford was available along with her co-counsel. And, they're not doing a bad job. It's just they don't seem to have a coherent theory of the case. And it's important that everything you do is geared around that theory. At some points, she's kind to Wendy on the stand, and it looks like they're in cahoots. And then she goes after Wendy. It just like snaps at the very end and pretty much says, you everyone in the family should be responsible for the crime, including you. I mean, that kind of stuff. Like, whoa.
Right.
So it's hard to tell where they're going all this. If they think that the jury is going to believe somehow that everyone else in the family was involved in this except for the controlling, domineering mother who pulled all the strings, that is a bridge that no one is crossing.
Right. Well, and she does seem domineering. We've had a couple emotional outbursts. I want to talk about that. She's been cautioned several times by the judge. I think we have one at SOT 2 where she was emotional over the injuries that Mr. Markell had.
How did you take this photograph?
For the darkened area on his forearm.
Why was that of significance?
That is consistent with stippling.
What is stippling?
Stippling is being close contact to a firearm that was discharged, and it's going to be the unburnt gunpowder and gases that leave the barrel of a gun at a high velocity, and it will tattoo or stain the skin.
State's Exhibit 24, please. Is this another effort to capture that stippling that you observed?
Yes.
No further questions.
All right. So those that aren't watching, you can definitely see that Donna Adelson is extremely distraught over that testimony. And, I'm curious because when I see that, I think, she's mad and upset because she saw the jurors' faces when they're hearing about this and they're hearing about the damage that she put in play. What do you all think? Arthur, what do you think about?
Look, it could be a couple of things. First of all, for people who aren't watching, the injury I thought they were going to show something a little bit more graphic, like the gunshot wound. The injury is basically, for folks who can't see, it's like a black and blue. It just looks like a black and blue on his arm. I know it's a burn, but that's not what it would appear to be in that courtroom. Look, she can be crying because, number one, she's supposed to be crying, right?
Right.
It is her son-in-law. It is the father of her grandchildren that this is all about. So even though they're divorced and there's a lot of animosity, so, she's supposed to be upset to play that part. And who knows, maybe the reality of, if she really is guilty, the reality of her actions are setting in. Reading the transcript about the judge admonishing her, I thought her reactions were going to be a little more dramatic than that. I mean, again, for those who aren't watching, she's just sitting there crying. I mean, she's not screaming or yelling or saying, "Oh my God," or anything like that. I mean, I've had defendants done a lot, do a lot, show a lot more a negative emotion than her doing that right there. I mean, it's all part of the role that if you're faking it, she's supposed to play.
I know. I mean, that's ridiculous to draw that out in front of in front of the jury. The judge keeps admonishing her for doing that.
Well,
I want to list.
Actually, it was not in front of the jury. When the judge admonished her, it was outside the presence of the jury. He threatened to do it next time in front of the jury.
Mrs. Adelson, when the testimony is occurring or the evidence, I know you may have a natural reaction, but as best possible, you need to control your reactions concerning any head movements, any expressions of disagreement, or any emotional outburst. The jury must decide this matter on the merits, on the evidence. Do you understand this? Very well. I do not wish to do this in front of the jurors at all, but it's very important that you are able to control your emotions. Do you understand what I'm saying?
And these are crocodile tears.
Right.
She despised Danny. And it was so clear when Rob testified, and Rob recounted the conversation after Danny was murdered with his mom, and his mom said, "Yeah, I don't care." I mean, yeah, she didn't care, and you could see her peeking over to the jury while she's shedding her crocodile tears to make sure they're paying attention. It's really not fair, because if you want to cry on the stand and show emotion and express yourself to the jury, take the stand, but you can't have it both ways. You can't do it from your seat at the table. Go on the stand.
Well,
and
see that. Okay, hold on there, Mr. Prosecutor. Okay, that's you. Those of us who are defense attorneys, you're not throwing your client on the stand so quickly, and often you want to show as much humanity of your defendant as possible without them taking the stand. So you're putting your arm on their arm. You're making, sometimes at a lighthearted time, you're making a joke and showing that they could laugh, and other times you show that they could cry. So, I'm not faulting anyone for, she didn't do anything so outrageous. I mean, she was just sitting there sobbing, and I don't even know why the judge admonished her. I don't think it was anything.
I know it wasn't disruptive. It didn't disrupt the court.
Right,
proceeding.
exactly.
Well, it was the two of them. It was also Jackie Fulford who was calling him Danny, and she was nearly in tears, talking about how this awful murder took him away from his kids. You mean your client? What your client did? And to call him Danny. The client despised him. They called him Gibbers, which is a pejorative nickname for him. So now to change history and to all of a sudden to make this woman in a cardigan with her gray hair into this sweet victim, this granny who could never do this because she loved her son-in-law. No, she hated him, and she worked with her son to have him killed, allegedly.
Well, let's move to another witness that seems to be blaming Wendy.
Great prosecutor, Dave.
I'm a defense lawyer now, but I guess I'm still have the prosecutorial mindset.
You're a recovering prosecutor. How about that?
Fair enough.
I mean, sometimes you can't help what your client does. Sometimes you just can't. But luckily, she didn't really disrupt the proceedings. So let's talk about another witness, Luis Rivera. He took the stand, and I think we have SOT 4, where the defense actually was asking him who wanted Danny killed.
Then I said, if you would, put the number 5 next to the lady that wanted the man killed. And did you do that?
Yes, I did.
And was that with Wendy Adelson?
Yes, I did.
And then I asked you if the 2 people on the top of the page who have their pictures there and the names Donna Adelson and Harvey Adelson, you see those on the top?
Yes, ma'am.
I asked you, as far as you know, were they involved in any of this? And you said no, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So I asked you to put X's next to the people who on that page were not involved in this.
Yes, ma'am.
And you did that.
Yes, I did.
Thank you.
All right, tell me, does it not sound like they're blaming Wendy, the defense? Dave?
Oh, yeah, I actually thought that was a score for the defense, because up to that moment, Rivera had testified in previous trials that it was the lady who wanted this done, the lady. And we all assumed it was Donna. Mm-hmm. And now here we are at Donna's trial, and he clarifies for the first time that it was Wendy.
Right.
And that was shocking. I got to tell you, I've been following this case closely. That was shocking. And I think it does put pressure on the state to go after Wendy next. And I do think that her day is coming. But as far as that was a win for Donna, because now you have the killer who is cooperating, the accomplice, who is saying that this was ordered by Wendy and allows Donna to point the finger at the daughter. And it is interesting because I thought there was no way that Donna would turn on Wendy. After all, Donna only has a few years left, and she did this for Wendy and allegedly and her children because Donna loves the grandkids. Doesn't want to leave the grandkids without a mother. But Wendy refused to agree to Donna's subpoena before trial. Wendy fought Donna's subpoena so that Wendy would not testify for her mother. And I think this is a bit of payback.
Oh, it's intense. I mean, and we'll talk about it in a minute, her reaction. But the last time she testified, the last time that she spoke with her mother was November 2023. So just imagine walking in that courtroom and seeing a daughter testifying against her mother, essentially. But let's, before we talk about that, let's see SOT 5. I want to get into Wendy actually testifying because that is by far the best witness.
Once again, Mrs. Adelson, I'm going to reiterate the instruction that I gave to you last Friday concerning any reactions that you may have to either the testimony or the evidence in the case. I understand this may be a distressing thing for your child to be offering testimony in your trial. However, you are to control your expressions and your emotions. Do you understand those? Everyone can take their break. If you need to step down until it's time to testify, you may do so as well.
All right, I know your opinion on this, Dave, but Arthur, when I saw this, all I thought about as a mother is I can't imagine. Obviously, I didn't have my son-in-law, a hitman try to kill my son-in-law, but just think about the emotion. And I mean, we deal with these emotions in court every day. Just think about this. I mean, when you saw this, what did you feel?
Well, let's start with the underlying fact is that he's got one son who's in prison for this for life. You got another son who I'm sure we're going to talk about who she hadn't spoken to in basically a decade. And now her daughter is going to try to put her in jail for the rest of her life. I don't think she's going to be winning any Mother of the Year awards. But she's doing the same thing, right? I mean, what we just spoke about moments ago is you have the defense attorney saying it wasn't the mom, it was the daughter who ordered the hit. Now, truth be told, it's really not what the mother is doing to the daughter probably is not going to hurt the daughter. In other words, if the jury comes back and in their minds, they're like, yeah, Wendy probably did it. I don't see the prosecution, and Dave could step in and correct me if I'm wrong, saying, okay, well, we tried to go after the mom. That didn't work. Now let's go after the daughter. That's usually not how it works. Whereas if Wendy is successful, she's going to send her mom to jail for the rest of her life. Dave, am I incorrect about that? Would you think if the jury felt that it was Wendy, would you think that they would charge Wendy, or doesn't she have some sort of immunity agreement?
She has the limited use and derivative use immunity. So what she said at the trial, as long as she didn't lie, will not be used against her. But the state has developed evidence against her separately, and they can use that against her. I do think they're going to charge Wendy next if and when Donna is convicted. If Donna walks, this case is over. They're not going because Wendy is a tougher one to get than Donna. Donna's easier, and Charlie was easier than Donna. So as they go one by one, it gets tougher. I do actually agree with you guys. And I actually think that Donna's emotions there were real because she's seeing this daughter that she would die for turn against her, essentially. And this is what this whole thing has become. What a family. And I will disagree one thing with Ashley, is that Ashley said the best witness of the day was Wendy. I think the best witness has been Rob, who is the black sheep of the family, who actually is the good guy of the family. He went a different direction than Wendy and Charlie, and it shows.
He was. Let's get to him in a minute. I have one more thing I want to talk about with Wendy. I want to have a SOT played, but when we get done with that, I want to know what you thought was the most important part of Wendy's testimony. If we could play SOT 7, this is what I think is the most important part of her testimony.
Was part of the plot to kill your ex for you to have plausible deniability or to know very little about it?
I was not involved in any plot to kill Danny.
Were you shielded from the plot because, I don't know, you couldn't be trusted to keep a secret?
I was not involved in any plot to kill Danny.
I feel like we could have played a drinking game. How many times did she say that? You could tell her lawyer had prepped her. That's your fallback statement. When in doubt, say that. She just kept saying it over and over. And I think that's powerful. What do you think, Dave?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Dave.
No, Arthur, you go ahead.
Arthur,
No,
go
I mean,
ahead.
of course you're going to prep. If you're her lawyer, of course you're going to keep prepping her to say that. Now, the counter could be like, well, isn't it interesting that the cable guy just happened to be at your house at the exact same time? So now you have a witness that shows you were home when this all went down. So that's going to be the state's argument. Or I don't even know, or the defense. I don't know who's trying to put Wendy in the mix here. I think both sides are at this point. But yes, of course you're going to have her trained, and pardon that term, but it really is. I mean, you take them in your office until 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, and you prep them and you practice with them. And what are you going to say then? And what are you going to say then? I am not involved with any plot to kill. I'm not involved with that. I mean, it's all work and no play makes dull boy. Whatever that line was.
Wow, a Shining reference. Didn't expect that one, Arthur. Well done, sir.
Thank you,
Well,
Dave.
I think the flaw in the defense's theory here is that they think that by tarring Wendy, it somehow won't reflect upon Donna. Like, if you convince a jury that Wendy is guilty, I don't see how the jury can say, okay, she did it on her own. There's no way her mother was involved in that. Her mother controlled her life from the point of establishing her dating profile to writing her legal briefs. She was doing everything. She was pulling the strings. And if you believe Wendy's doing this on her own without her mom's involvement, then I got a bridge in the Everglades to sell you. So I don't think it works. And one thing to Arthur said that how convenient that the cable guy was over is actually, yes, it was a TV repairman. And TV is important because that was the word that the family used as code for the murder. That's right. And it is so interesting that of all people to come over to the house, it was a TV that was smashed. And the ex-boyfriend said that it looked like a person smashed it. So how convenient. And one more thing about TV. Are TV repairmen a thing? I know this happened like 11 years ago, right? When you have a break in your TV, don't just buy a new TV. Is that a thing? You bring over the Geek Squad and pay $500?
No, that's a great point.
That's a great point because, yes, you are correct. You are correct. There's no vacuum cleaner repair people anymore either. We live in a disposable society.
Yeah,
so
we buy a new one.
A very, very well-founded point.
All right, before we run out of time on Donna, I want to talk about Robert Adelson. You've already alluded to it, Dave. Robert is definitely interesting. Next, we're going to talk about his testimony. This is the first time he's ever testified. He moved out at 18. He kept in touch, but barely. He was estranged from his mom. The last time they spoke was in 2016. So when we come back from the break, we'll have Robert Adelson's testimony. But if you have any questions or comments for us, you can now email us. The email address is mktruecrime@devilmaycaremedia.com. We would love to hear from you. Thanks.
You know those movies that tell the stories of real-life heroes with the courage to stand up in the face of indescribable evil and hatred to protect and save others? They're important, especially now when the world seems to need heroes more than ever. Bao, Artist at War, is a film about how art and love can save lives literally and spiritually. It's the remarkable true story of Joseph Bao, a gifted artist and master forger who risked his life to save others during the Holocaust. There, he not only found the strength to survive, but also an unexpected love with Rebecca, a woman whose courage matched his own. Their secret wedding, held inside a concentration camp, was later immortalized in the film Schindler's List. Bao, Artist at War, opens only in theaters for a limited run beginning September 26th. Go to baomovie.com, BAU movie.com, to watch the trailer, read about Joseph's real-life journey, and find showtimes near you. Visit BAU movie.com to watch the trailer and learn more, and you can also sign your organization up for group screenings. Again, that's BAUmovie.com.
All right, welcome back. Now, as promised, Robert Adelson testified, and I think it's really interesting because we've never heard from Robert before. So this was something new in this trial. He finally broke his silence and testified. He moved out at 18, which I think is very telling. He kept in touch with his family, but not a lot. He was estranged from his mother. The last time they spoke was 2016. So, and he testified. We're going to hear in SOT 10 that she was controlling and involved.
Who is the leader in the family? Who tends to run the show?
I think my mom.
Okay, so Donna Adelson?
Yes.
Would you describe Donna Adelson's personality as being more controlling or more laid back?
I think more on the controlling side.
All right, so Dave, you think he was the most important witness. I mean, I was excited about him because we hadn't heard from him, but tell me why you think he was so important to this case.
Well, we had never heard from him before. I thought he was the most interesting witness because you see how different he is from his brother, Charlie. Charlie fashioned himself as the maestro. He lived in South Florida. He dated shot girls. He was high on cocaine a lot. He was jacked up on steroids. He was living the fast life, going to Thailand to do God knows what. And he was the one on his Ferrari with the license plate maestro who thought he was the maestro, who thought he was, like his mom, pulling the strings, who could arrange for a murder. Meanwhile, Rob goes in a different direction. Rob actually was involved with a woman of Indian descent, and his mother did not approve. And so they had a bad breakup about it. But then he agreed to move on from his Indian girlfriend, and he found someone else with his mother's approval. That fizzled, and he went back and married the Indian woman, and they're happily ever after, and he didn't speak to his mom much. But what was really, and that was not allowed in evidence, by the way, but that tells you the backstory. But what was really powerful was his conversations with his mom when he tried to bring up the murder of the son-in-law, someone like they knew so well, part of the family, and the mother never wanted to talk about it. In fact, said, "It's not my business. I don't care." Really? I mean, this is the woman who was crying when she saw the photos of Danny. This exposed her for whom she is.
Yeah, and we've got those clips to play. I think that one that you were talking about, but also when Donna told him that someone had knocked on Danny's door and shot him. How would she know that? So if we can listen to, I think we've got that. SOT 11.
One of the things that she told me is, it bothered me, but I didn't have any other details about. But she said that, someone went to the front door and said, "Are you Dan Markel?" and then shot him, and then. I said, "Well, how could you know that? Who's telling you that?" And she said, "Well, that's just what they're telling us." And
Okay. So she said someone told her that someone knocked on Danny's door, said, "Are you Dan Markel?" He said yes, and the shooter shot him.
That's the story I heard. And, later we found out that wasn't what happened, but that story bothered me a lot because there's only one way you could hear that story.
Okay. But look, this guy, though, could be cross-examined up the hilt right from the very beginning. So your mother's very controlling, correct? Correct. How old are you now? Oh, you're 38 years old. So, and you haven't spoken to your mom in a decade, right? So you were 28 years old, right? And your mom has lived 10 years, correct? Correct. And you haven't been around at all, correct? Correct. And you don't know anything about Wendy and her marriage and her divorce and all of that stuff, correct? Correct. And you don't know what role your mother played whatsoever, correct? Correct. Because you don't call your mother, right? Right. You didn't call her for Mother's Day, right? Right. You didn't call her for her birthday, right? Right. So therefore, you're coming here, you're telling the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what your mother is like 10 years after you've spoken to her. So she was 68 years old and now she's 78 years old. Do you think people change over the time? Yes, yes. So when you tell these people that your mother was controlling, you're talking about when you were 18 years old and you left the house. That's 20 years ago. Correct? Correct. And in fact, when she told you he got shot and someone came to the door and knocked on the door, she said, "That's what they're telling us," right? You don't know if a detective told her that. You don't know if she read that in a newspaper. And in fact, it turned out not to be the truth. So she didn't know what actually happened. She just blurted something out that she heard. Correct? Correct. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Bam, that's going on Arthur's website.
That's not what the defense lawyer did. I think they asked 2 questions on cross.
Well, they should have called me, man.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's, that's what a good cross does. But sorry, Dave.
No, Arthur's a great lawyer, and you can see why. There were definitely some money left on the table by the defense here, but I think that Robert did a great job. He came across so credible, so sincere, with the pain in his eyes. You can just see it, that he didn't want to be there to testify against his mother, but he did it because
David, what did I don't know the answer to this question. What did he offer in terms of real evidence? Okay,
Nothing.
His mom's a jerk.
Nothing.
What did he give in terms of something you can hold on to?
His mother knew details about the crime that no one else knew.
She was wrong.
The day after.
But she's wrong. In other words, she doesn't know details. He said they came to the door and asked. He didn't die in the house, right? He dies in the car, doesn't he?
No, I thought they shot him, and we don't know if he actually said, "Are you Danny Markel or Dan Markel?" So that's true. But the fact that the mother said it and what she said later about "I don't care," and she refused to talk about it, and he kept trying to bring it up, and she would never want to talk about it. It just is bizarre behavior.
I don't know what kind of evidence that is that she's refusing to discuss it.
And then says, "I don't care."
You're asking the jury to send someone to jail for life. Is that really evidence? Look, I don't want to talk about it. I didn't like the guy. We went through a horrible situation with this divorce. He tried to take my grandchildren away from me and from your sister. I don't want to deal with it. It happened, and let's move on.
Well, also,
I didn't think it was relevant at all.
Well, also, remember, her defense is that I had nothing to do with it. Wendy did it all on her own. Charlie did it all on his own. And here he is saying she is the most dominant, controlling person in the household. She's involved in every part of their lives. Who knows better than her own
20
son?
years ago, Your Honor. Right. 20 years ago. That's the last time he lived with this woman, maybe more.
And I can't believe that Robert was allowed to testify that he thought it was strange that Donna wasn't curious about who killed Markle. How is that relevant? How is that not objectionable? How was that allowed? We've got that at SOT 12, if you can play that.
After the murder of Dan Markell, did Donna Adelson seem curious about who killed Dan Markell?
No.
Objection.
Objection, speculation.
Was there a complete lack of curiosity?
Yeah, nobody seemed curious.
Did you actually ever ask her, like, after the murder, like, hey, like, what do you think happened? What do you...
Objection.
Yeah,
relevant.
and, the conversations were kind of rerouted, or that was certainly discouraged, and it was probably like maybe sometime like mid-August, when I finally had a chance to ask and say, what is going on? This was not a small event. This was getting a lot of notoriety. And I said, what do you guys think happened? And she had said, I don't know and I don't care. It doesn't concern me.
Oh, come on.
Was that out of character for her to not be curious and not be asking some questions?
Yeah, I mean, it was an unsolved murder of, my former brother-in-law, like someone that we all know very well. I mean, if it was like some neighborhood gossip, people would be interested. This was like national interest, and nobody had any curiosity about, who did this to Danny.
That sounds like family gossip. I can tell Arthur and I would have been jumping out of our seats.
Objection. I'd be moving for a mistrial.
I would too.
I'd be moving for a mistrial. Like relevance, it's speculation. Well, what does it matter?
Right.
And she's so controlling. You haven't lived with your mother in 20 years. How do you know how controlling she is? And this is stuff that should not be coming into evidence. It's not circumstantial evidence who murdered somebody else by the fact that the defendant is not curious about who murdered somebody else.
Based on who she is and how domineering and how much of a gossip and involved in everyone's life, the fact that she clams up and is not interested at all after the son-in-law is murdered, after she dedicated her life to writing the briefs, to getting the kids back in South Florida. And then once the son-in-law is killed and the problem is solved, she's like, I don't care. And that's it? Really? I just think it's very relevant. Maybe you want to object because it's too relevant, too powerful, and too damaging to your client. Maybe that's why.
It's just speculation. I mean, it can be damaging, but the jury's going to mistake that for something else, something actual, real evidence, which they just haven't shown at this point, especially with that witness. So there's one other SOT that I want to talk about. It is with Charlie, and Charlie hated Mr. Markell. There was testimony about how much of an overprotective brother he was. And I think this was from a ex-boyfriend of Wendy, Jeffrey Lacoste. He testified, and he knew Charlie and testified a little bit about Charlie. And it gave us some insight into what Charlie was like. If we could play SOT 14.
Can I tell you something in confidence?
Yeah, can I tell you something? After I challenge her, can I tell you something in confidence? Sure. Last summer, my brother looked into all options possible to take care of the Danny Markell problem, including hiring a hitman, and it would cost about $15,000.
Okay, and when she referred to her brother, she's got two of those, right?
She said Charlie.
Okay. And when she said Charlie looked into hiring a hitman, are you familiar with Charlie's joke? I looked into hiring a hitman, but got you a TV as a divorce present because it was cheaper.
Yeah, Wendy had told me that joke a couple of times. This was not that joke.
Okay, so this was something different.
Yeah, the joke was said with levity. It's a dark joke, but this I found chilling. I found disturbing. It made my stomach flip. It kind of took me aback. She was dead serious when she said this, and she'd asked to tell me in confidence, which you don't do before you tell a joke.
All
Okay.
All right, I feel comfortable that Arthur agrees with me on this question. Dave, I'm going to ask you a question. 2 more witnesses testified. One was June. It was Charlie Adelson's ex-girlfriend, was allowed to testify that Charlie was depressed and anxious when investigated. And then there was a friend, Ryan Fitzpatrick, that was able to testify that Charlie's demeanor changed post-investigation. What is going on in Florida that these witnesses are able to say that someone is anxious because the police are asking questions?
No, it's relevant evidence. I mean, this is not hearsay. It's not what he said for the truth of the matter asserted. The guy who's this cocky maestro all of a sudden now is going crazy because the walls are closing in on him. And this is not the first time we've heard this from Ryan Fitzpatrick and the other girlfriend. Clearly, Charlie has a type. This other woman reminds us a lot of Katie Magbanua. And it's been provided as evidence in other trials too. So this is nothing new, and the court allowed it, and there wasn't even an objection to it.
I know there wasn't an objection. Doesn't mean it was right. And I think I might rant on that.
There's been a lot of objections, but yeah, as Ashley said, it doesn't mean it was right.
Doesn't mean I was right. I might rant on that a little bit later. But I want to talk about baby Emmanuel. This is a case where there's a 7-month-old baby who's missing and believed to be dead, but they have not found a body yet. They arrested the parents on suspicion of murder, and we just learned that they've actually now charged the parents with murder. The police did not believe the version of events. Essentially, the parents had called the police and said that the baby was kidnapped. And police just said that doesn't make sense. We actually think something else happened. I think we've got some video 1. Oh, great. It's being rolled. Yeah, where they're arrested. So they were arrested, which is interesting because there's no body, but they're still continuing to do the search. What we learned was that the parents have been married since 2021, but there's prior instance of child cruelty. The wife is still standing by her man. She's sticking to her story, but apparently there's been other abuse allegations. Arthur, what do you think whenever there's prior abuse allegations? What's going on in this case?
Well, it also has to do with the cooperation aspect of it. Anytime someone is missing, right, the first suspect is the significant other. Now, when you're talking about an infant, significant other is the parents, right?
Yeah.
So as a defense attorney, if you're there with the mom, you have to, if the mother is truly innocent, she's just going to spill her guts, which she started doing. And then when she got asked some tough questions, her lawyer told her to stop talking. That raises eyebrows to me. Yes, but as a parent, I mean, I know that if something happens, I don't even want to talk about it. If something happened to one of my kids, but I don't need a lawyer, right? I'm just going to tell you everything. So they haven't really told us what the evidence is. Sadly, we don't have the child at this point, the way we didn't have Casey Anthony when her mom was charged. Casey Anthony was the mom and
Casey was the mom.
Kaylee was right. Kaylee was the baby. So they charged Casey before they found the baby. So it's the same thing here, but we don't know what the evidence is that they're charging him with murder. From a prosecutor's point of view, you better have some decent evidence before you're charging parents with killing or murdering your child.
Yeah, definitely. And it does sound like it was just inconsistent statements. So next, we're going to get to your emails. We've allowed viewers to write in, so please email us. You can email us at mktruecrime@devilmaycaremedia.com. Email us anything you want us to talk about, any questions you have for us, and we're going to try to get to all of those questions after the break.
I've been talking a lot about Riverbend Ranch lately because I love their steaks. Those Riverbend Ranch steaks are something else. Riverbend Ranch has taken Black Angus beef to a whole new level. Did you recently hear RFKJ, head of the Maha movement, saying really all he eats is red meat and fermented products? Hello, Riverbend Ranch has got you covered. For the last 35 years, Riverbend Ranch has been creating a very elite Angus herd by using ultrasound to select genetically superior cattle with a focus on flavor and tenderness. When you buy from Riverbend Ranch, you're not only supporting the 64 cowboys and cowgirls and their families who work on the ranch, but you're also supporting over 260 other U.S. ranches and the hundreds of American families who work on them. It is born in the USA, raised in the USA, and processed in the USA. It is aged to perfection for 21 days and shipped directly from the ranch to your home. This is not your average Black Angus beef, so order from riverbendranch.com. Use the promo code Megan for $20 off your first order, and let me know what you think. riverbendranch.com, promo code Megan.
All right, we're going to get to some questions in a minute, but first we've got new body cam footage from Kohberger from the police when they were interviewing one of the survivors. She tearfully recalled hearing when her roommate was actually screaming, and she came face to face with a masked killer. If we could play the body cam that shows her talking with the other officer about what she heard.
Pretty much they were in the main room. I heard them dancing and laughing. Kaylee went upstairs and she screamed because someone from the room. She ran downstairs. And I kept calling her name and she wouldn't answer. And then I saw the guy. I just locked the door and I ran downstairs. We don't know what's going on. I heard her scream and she ran downstairs because she saw someone. That's what I'm pretty sure she said. Someone's here and she screamed and just ran downstairs. And I called for her name, but I jumped up and locked my door because I was so scared. And then I heard someone in the bathroom and I heard her crying and I heard some guy say that you're going to be okay, I'm going to help you. And I kept calling her name, but she wasn't answering. And then I opened the door for a second and I saw this guy and he was not insanely tall, but he was wearing all black and like this mask that was just covering his forehead and his mouth.
Footage like that is telling me why Brian Kohberger took a plea and didn't go to trial. Because if you hear that, I mean, you just can't listen to that and not feel something in your gut. You know, that's the type of testimony that you need to plea. You need to admit to what you did.
You can't overcome it. You shouldn't overcome it. You should plead guilty. You are guilty. And you know,
beg for mercy.
That's it. He's now going to live the rest of his life behind bars, and I'm sure it's not going to be a very pleasant experience.
No, it has not been a pleasant experience. I mean, how do you explain this? You know, you can't overcome something like this at a trial. You've got to tell your client that you know, own up to what you did. I mean, this is just haunting. But, you know, as a parent, I know you all are parents. It's listening to a kid, and that's what these are. These are kids listening to a kid and the horror and the trauma that they went through. It's a lot. Dave, what do you think when you hear that?
I'm thinking, I wonder if it should have been made public. Just to see this young woman just in such distress and trauma. I don't know the value of providing that video to the public at this point. So that maybe throw it back to you guys. Should they have released this to the public?
You know, I'm a fan of transparency. Yeah, without her face. I mean, I think one of the reasons that they don't release things like this is because it is hard to get a fair trial. And, you know, the one thing that we always say is we don't want to try it twice. I know that's one of the things that the state and the defense can usually agree on. You don't want to have to try a case twice. And what I mean by that is you don't want prejudice infecting a jury because, you know, if you do have to put everybody through that, you don't want them to have to go through it twice. And so, you know, when they play their cards close to the vest on things like this, I think it's probably to avoid some type of prejudice. But anybody who, you know, if a jury heard this, I mean, you can't overcome that. I mean, that's raw. Yeah.
And accurate. Besides it being raw, it's like accurate. I mean,
it's so
giving
accurate.
like detail accounts of what took place. And you know, unlike Robert in the segment before, who hadn't seen his mom in years and hadn't lived with, I mean, this is real time, real evidence.
Well, when I hear that, I just think this guy got off easy. He should have gotten the death penalty, because if the death penalty isn't made for a sociopath murder, quadruple murder like that guy, who's it made for? Why even have it then? And they let him off the hook by doing the plea deal early on without all the victims' families in agreement, by the way. And now he's going to be in prison the rest of his life without parole. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. He's not pleased in prison right now. He's not getting the mental health counseling, or, you know, people are yelling mean things at him. So he's not going to do well in prison. So this whole life in prison thing for him may actually not be very long.
Oh, I see all those things about how he's having such a tough time in prison. And I just want to say, come to Georgia. Have you read the reports about Georgia prisons? They have nice prisons out in Idaho. This is a little bit different story. And I don't think anybody's really feeling that bad, especially after you hear video like that and you just know what that poor girl is going to go through the rest of her life.
Yeah.
I want to talk about one of our emails that we got. We are accepting emails. I'll read it again at the end of the show, but we'd love to hear from you if you do have things you want to talk to us about or you want us to talk about. We got from Aaron. We got an email about some work that he does, some volunteer work, and I just want to talk about it for a minute and encourage people to do this type of work. It's called CASA, and it's a special advocate, court-appointed child advocate. Some states call them guardian ad litems, some states, all different terms. But essentially, it's the same thing. It's a person in the community that volunteers their time to help children who are involved in the court system. And how it works is you take a class, they teach you how to do it, and you are there to listen to what the kids want. Because, if I'm going into court for a juvenile, I may not necessarily be looking out. I'm looking out for what my client wants, which is kind of hard to understand, but that's not always in the best interest of my client. And so these people are someone who actually talks to the kids who are involved in court. And it's not a lawyer, but it's, we've got a lot of people listening to this show that are interested in true crime. This is a way to really make a difference. So I encourage you to Google CASA, court-appointed special assistants, guardian ad litems, things like that, so that you can maybe help. And I think it's a great chance for people to really, really merge their interest with helping out from others. All right, so we've got our closing rants. 1 minute. Everybody gets to talk about whatever they want to talk about. Dave, you want to go first?
Sure. I want to talk about consciousness of guilt. So we saw this in the Donna Adelson trial. Yes, it's a circumstantial case. Yes, there are things you didn't like that were admitted into evidence, but consciousness of guilt is really powerful because we saw this with Charlie, because after the arrest started coming down and Katie, his girlfriend, got arrested, he started freaking out. And why did he freak out? Because he knew he was going to be arrested, because he knew he did something wrong. That's consciousness of guilt. That's why it's relevant. And that's why it's so powerful in this case. And you have these people who thought they were above the law, this family who didn't think the rules applied to them. And each of them started to melt down through consciousness of guilt. You saw that with Donna. Donna decided to buy one-way plane tickets to a non-extraditable country, Vietnam. That's going to be some of the most powerful evidence used against her. They caught her on the jetway climbing aboard the plane, but they arrested her before she could flee. Why do you buy one-way tickets to Vietnam after your son has been convicted? Consciousness of guilt. So to me, the consciousness of guilt is a powerful thing, and sometimes you can be your own worst enemy. Not only is it powerful, though, it's also an admissible thing, especially in Florida.
I knew you'd talk about Adelson.
That's compelling. So for my 1 minute, I want to change topics altogether, something we didn't talk about today, but that's been very topical. And it has to do with the American flag, the United States of American flag. It's something we all love. And I grew up in a household. My dad was a captain in the Army. I believe in front of his home right now, he has 3 different American flags. He has the American flag, the bicentennial American flag, and a 9/11 memorial American flag. And President Trump announced yesterday that he signed an executive order saying that burning the American flag he wants it to be a crime, or he's signing an order that it should be a crime. And, I get what he's doing. It's near and dear to people's heart, and we're about to celebrate the anniversary of this country. But I was very close with Justice Scalia, and this was one of the decisions, Texas v. Johnson, where he joined the liberal majority, the likes of William Brennan and Thurgood Marshall, who are 2 lions of the left, saying that if it's your American flag, you have a right to express your feelings and burn that American flag. And he said it was the only case that his wife chimed in the morning after he signed on to that decision. He came down for breakfast and his wife was humming the tune, "You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave." So I hope the United States Supreme Court precedent stands true.
That was really well said, Arthur. Those liberal activists like Antonin Scalia. Well done, sir.
Such a liberal activist. So my rant is based on some of the stuff we talked about today. I want to talk about demeanor, and demeanor being used in the court system, being used by law enforcement officers, being used in front of juries. And, I know we don't like Donna Adelson. I get that. Nobody does. Nobody likes a lot of people that are accused of crimes. But in this country, we're innocent until proven guilty. And what we do a lot of times, and you can see that in the Baby Emanuel case. And again, we don't like people that harm children, obviously. But arrests based on demeanor and way people are responding and way people are reacting and using that evidence to convict people in court. I am so sick of that, because after doing this for 20 years, everybody responds differently. Everybody responds to trauma differently. If you have a death in a family and you have 5 family members, some of them are going to be bawling, some are going to have inappropriate laughing, some are going to be throwing things, some are going to be punching things, some are going to be eating, some are not going to be eating. Everybody acts different. And we allow demeanor to be used in courtrooms every day. And it just was top of my mind because I saw this coming out in Adelson, the fact that she's emotional. We're reading into whether, why she's emotional. And, I get that. But the jury sees it. Why do we need to highlight it? Someone is emotional. Everybody acts differently. We heard from multiple witnesses, Charlie got anxious when the police were talking to him. Well, hell, who wouldn't get anxious when the police are looking at you? That's not evidence of guilt. That's normal. And, we look at all of these people and how they react and their demeanor. It all comes down to demeanor. And every single one of us has a different trauma response. It is not evidence of guilt. And so my rant is just please stop relying on demeanor. And if you're on a jury, please ignore if the prosecution argues, well, they're acting guilty. That is not evidence. Thank you so much for joining us today and listening to all of our rants and all of our talk about all these exciting and interesting cases, sad cases, interesting cases. But thank you for joining us. Tell us what you think of the show. Tell us if there's any stories you want us to cover. We would love to hear from you. You can email us at mktruecrime@devilmaycaremedia.com. And our next show drops Friday. I hope you will listen.